If you offer marketing services to clients and managing all the projects, tasks, and the information that comes with managing those clients is your biggest pain point right now, then you're in the right place. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Robin Hankey and I help female marketing freelancers and consultants use ClickUp to get their business organized so it can continue to grow while they don't burn out. In today's video, we're going to be doing part 2 of a 3-part series, which is called The Most Important, Least Talked About Features of ClickUp. And in this video, I'm going to be going over a really important feature that you can use called Milestones to get a really great handle on your project management. Before I start, if you haven't watched part 1 of this series, please go back to that because it's a super important foundational piece of understanding ClickUp. A lot of us jump right into ClickUp, we download some templates, and then we find ourselves getting frustrated by trying to fit ourselves into this box. But I promise you, it's just that you're missing some of that foundational understanding of how the tool works, and that's what we're starting with in last week's video. So I'm going to put a link here to watch that video, and without further ado, let's get started on part 2. So the first thing that you need to understand is what a milestone is. So a milestone in ClickUp is just a different type of task. There's something called task types in ClickUp, and you can create all types of different task types, but milestones is a standard feature. I like to think of milestones as a way to track the completion of multiple subtasks. So really anything can be a milestone. Some examples could be a blog, a video like I'm doing for you right now, creating a lead magnet, a landing page, a website refresh, anything that's a larger project that has multiple steps in it. Now, the purpose of using milestones in ClickUp is so that we can create a specific view that allows us to only look at our milestones. And in effect, essentially, we're using milestones just so we can look at the project progress and keep track of all of our client projects in one place. The best way to show this is inside of ClickUp. Okay, so this is the setup that I'm talking about. So when we're using milestones to deem projects, essentially, then it allows us to create a filtered view to only show us milestones, right? And this is why it's so simple, right? These are really simple foundations. I've created across all of my clients, all of these different projects, right? And I know that they're projects or milestones because they have this diamond shape. So you can see here that you can see the client name, you can see the list that the project was created under, which allows you to kind of have some context to what the project is, right? We also have our start date and our due date, so we can create some timelines for ourselves, some expectations. We also have a time estimate, which maybe time estimates are not your strength right now, but as you start to get into this process, you start to see the value and the power of it, you'll be hooked on it. So our time estimates are calculated based on the value of the subtasks that we have within our milestone, right? So a milestone, like we said, is just to track project timelines and estimates and completion, but it's also to track the completion of all these subtasks, right? Like this is the actual work that we're going to be doing. And so when I'm creating these subtasks, I'm including a time estimate for each of them. And what that then does, if you use the auto roll-up time estimate feature in ClickUp, if you turn on that ClickUp, then you get this nice rolled up time estimate, because obviously it's a lot easier to estimate how long an individual task is going to take you versus an entire project, right? So it's a lot nicer to go and add time estimates and allow that to create for you a time estimate for your project than vice versa. So we have our time estimate. We also have time tracked, which as you start to get into using ClickUp as well, I highly encourage you to use the native time tracker. Again, if you're not comfortable or used to using time tracking, it will begin to show how valuable it is and you'll start using it all the time, I promise. And so this is again, another roll up of the time that we've tracked in each of these individual subtasks. So this right here is super powerful already, right? I have a time estimate of how long a project is going to take to complete, which essentially is just trying to like cap how long this project will take me. And then beside it, I have an actual real-time calculation of how much time I've already put into that project, which is, I am obsessed with that, right? It allows you to very quickly see, okay, wow, this is about to go over. And then I have a comments field here as well. This is where I like to put little updates for myself, right? If the client tells me something in an email and I just want to have a place to remember it, I like to include it in our comments field so that I can refer back to it and always remember it. But my favorite part of this is the percentage completion. So this is a dynamic progress bar, which means every time I complete a subtask, this percentage goes up automatically. Not only do you get the dopamine hit of checking off a subtask, which is great in and of itself, but you also can come to the project completion bar and see the percentage go up, which is super motivating. I don't know if it's just for me, if you'll find the same, but when you start to see the impact of your efforts to the broader work that you're trying to complete, it's very motivating to to continue doing more tasks. But this is really the main goal, right? This is at the client workspace level, which means this is all of the projects I have across all of my clients. This isn't looking at Linda Lynn by herself and her projects. This isn't looking at Physio Mentors projects all by itself. We're looking at everything in one view. And this becomes really powerful when we start to become more effective at project planning, right? So if we're trying to plan out a new client's project, we can do so in terms of all the other projects we already have going on at that time, right? We're not just kind of like plucking a date from nothing that we think is going to please the client, and then we end up having to work 100 hours to try to get it done on time. The other way that this is powerful is for sales, right? If you have new opportunities that are coming in and you're typically not sure when you can fit them in, this gives you that power. And so not only just your PM view, this view that I just showed you, this filtered view by task type is Milestone, you also can play with the other views that ClickUp has, because there's so much customization with ClickUp. You have to kind of find what works for you. And you can use something like timelines planning, and this might help you have more of a visual on when you're actually going to have time in the future to work on new client work versus just agreeing to take on a new client and then again burning yourself out to try and get it done in time. This view is a replacement for this view, which is what is a typical view for client work, right? This is typically what people look at, which is just like your project or your main task and all your subtasks and your due dates. And it's just a lot of information to look at. I find this overwhelming personally, and I think there's a lot of people out there who are going to feel the same. You don't really know where to start. It just feels like a lot of information. So by using Milestones, it allows me to start my day by looking at my client work from a high level, from a bird's eye view. What projects am I working on right now? What are my timelines looking like? What's going to be due soon? How far along am I on these projects? And are these projects actually on track? Like, am I going over the amount of time that I originally thought it was going to take me? This gives us so much more control than probably we've ever had before. I know that's true for me. Before ClickUp, I did not have this, and things would feel a little scattered and chaotic and just like kind of picking tasks out of thin air to work on and not really knowing what I should prioritize. Okay, so that's part one, which is just the project management aspect. But part two of this is using the milestone task as a repository for all of our effort. So what does that mean? So typically when we create something for a client, we usually end up using like a Google Doc, for example, and we'll create a Google Doc and it'll have like just a dump of all the information that we need for that thing, right? So that could include landing page links and copy and maybe you got feedback from clients and it's all kind of living in a Google Doc, and that can work. I like to use the Milestone to replace a Google Doc. And this is a great example of that. So this is an ebook lead magnet I was doing for a client. And so I like to kind of track everything inside of this Milestone. I like to use docs to just kind of start the process. So maybe the first step is to do some research. So I'll create a doc and I'll kind of track all of that in there. And then maybe the second thing is a rough draft, and that's where ultimately all the copy is done. We can also attach creatives, and we can create custom fields that allow us to include the links that we want to reference in the future as well. So, you know, if a client says to you, hey, Robin, do you have that asset, the ebook that we created? And you're being asked to come up with some information on the fly, which is very common in this industry. If I'm like, okay, I got to find that asset. I'm going to go into my links view of this asset. Now I've got my landing page, thank you page, asset link. Okay, all that information is literally right there. So the purpose of ClickUp and, you know, eliminating all of those other third-party tools and just having all of your information live in your ClickUp ecosystem is to save ourselves all of that time and that mental energy. So we can quickly say, here it is, copy paste. here you are. So to summarize, the power of Milestones is two-pronged. The first is that we use it to create a separate view for the sole purpose of project management tracking. We want to have a high-level view of all the projects that we're working on across all of our clients. And secondly, is to create databases of all of the things and the assets that we've created so that we can reference them again quickly and easily in the future when we need to. And that's it. That is the second most important part of ClickUp that nobody talks about, but is actually so incredibly important to understand. As you can see, you have so much more control than maybe you've ever had before. I know that's true for me. And I spend so much time in this view now, looking at it every day and feeling excited to do the work and excited about all the progress I'm making. So on next week's video, I'm going to be going over the next most important part of this, which is the actual day-to-day task creation and completion. Now that we've covered off our project aspect, let's get into the daily task lists and how we can create a master list that makes us want to do the work that we have, not feel overwhelmed, but also anticipate when we've assigned too much work for ourselves so we can manage our workload more effectively. Okay, in the meantime, if you love all these ClickUp tips and all this ClickUp advice, join my mailing list because I'm giving out weekly newsletters that cover use cases from my own business, stories, and just generally good tips that you might not have otherwise for marketing freelancers and consultants. It's just for you. Okay, and that's it. I will see you next week for part 3. Okay, bye.